This video is brought to you by Brilliant. Today, Trump's top defence appointment raises eyebrows. The UK makes a new climate commitment at COP29, and the US won't restrict arms to Israel. From TLDR News, this is your daily briefing for Wednesday the 13th of November 2024. US President-elect Donald Trump is continuing to make appointments to his incoming administration, with the latest batch bringing some expected names as well as some surprises. Trump has announced that major donor and billionaire Elon Musk will, alongside entrepreneur and former Republican presidential hopeful Vivek Ramaswamy, run the new so-called Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE. According to Trump, DOGE will help his administration to dismantle government bureaucracy, slash excess regulations, cut wasteful expenditures, and restructure federal agencies. He added it will provide advice and guidance from outside government, and will partner with the White House and Office of Management and Budget to drive large-scale structural reform and create an entrepreneurial approach to government never seen before. The presence of Musk in Trump's administration has raised questions about conflicts of interest, given Musk runs companies with lucrative government contracts. On top of this, Musk has apparently stayed close to Trump following the election, sitting in on multiple phone calls with world leaders, and apparently weighing in on staffing decisions. One of the more surprising appointments Trump has made is the nomination of Fox News host Pete Hegseth as Secretary of Defense. While Hegseth is an Army veteran, he has no government or defense policy experience, so is an unconventional choice, to say the least, to head the world's most powerful military. As a high-profile supporter of Trump, Hegseth has been a vocal opponent of allegedly woke practices in the US military, signaling a coming battle over social and personnel issues in the armed forces. Separately, Trump has announced his intention to appoint former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee as US Ambassador to Israel. Huckabee, a self-professed unapologetic Zionist, has been a staunch supporter of Israel over the years, and is a supporter of Israel's settlement policy in the West Bank. In fact, he said that he believes that Israel has title deed to Judea and Samaria, refusing to use the term West Bank, and using the Israeli preferred term instead. Back in 2008, Huckabee went as far as saying there is no such thing as a Palestinian. One key cabinet position that remains unfilled is Secretary of State, which is now widely expected to go to Florida Senator Marco Rubio, who would be the first Latino to serve in the position, and could help bolster Republican gains among the demographic. Rubio's appointment would perhaps signal a more hawkish than isolationist Trump administration, as Rubio has been known to take more hawkish positions against the likes of China, Iran, and Venezuela. There's more on the way, but remember to subscribe and ring the bell for more daily briefing tomorrow. Plus, if you want to support the channel like Antonio C., then consider joining the TLDR Daily Membership Program for just $1.99. Now, leaders and changemakers are gathering at Baku, Azerbaijan this week for the United Nations COP29 Climate Summit. One significant moment so far came from UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, who announced a new ambitious target to reduce the country's emissions by 81% by 2035. Now, TLDR's very own Jack Kelly is also at Baku at the summit and avoiding the terrible London weather, and discussed the UK's efforts to lead the fight against climate change with Emma Pinchbeck, head of the UK's Climate Change Committee. Here's what she had to say, starting with the important role played by her committee.
So the Climate Change Committee advises government on our international climate targets. So we did the advice for government on what level our nationally determined contribution should be that we're all talking about today. But also we advise government on our domestic climate ambitions, the carbon budgets, which are the 5-yearly chunks of delivery for each government, and then the ways that you might meet it. So what kinds of policies we think might work. And then the fun part of the job, and not fun part of the job, is holding government to account for delivery. So we also monitor their progress and tell them off or applaud them every year, depending on how they're doing.
When it comes to those targets, one of the big news items out of COP thus far has been Keir Starmer's speech and the announcements around the UK's new targets. Do you want to give us an overview of what that means and what those targets look like?
Well, someone said it in the event that we were just in, but it is really nice to be here at the UK Pavilion at a COP where there's so much buzz around what the UK is doing. And we are one of the first countries to publish our updated NDC. everyone needs to publish one by February. So that in itself is great. But the second thing is we are a developed economy. So what we say about climate change really matters in that context. But also it's a really ambitious NDC. It's the first to be really fully in line with 1.5 degrees. And I think you're seeing other countries now coming and wanting to talk to us about how we might do it.
Yeah.
My organisation obviously helps government work out how.
Yes. And what is the progress towards actually achieving the existing goals and also the current goals and the new goals that are being set?
So good news, bad news.
Okay.
We delivered on our first 3 domestic carbon budgets in the UK. So we are, again, one of the countries that's demonstrated you can do things like reduce emissions whilst growing GDP.
Yes.
We are one of the countries that demonstrated that you can keep the lights on while squeezing emissions out of your power sector by about 90% against 1990 levels. We are the first industrialised nation to have turned off our last coal-fired power station this October in Radcliffe. And we have the second biggest offshore wind market in the world. So we have done an astonishing amount to demonstrate that decarbonisation is possible, but largely in like big infrastructure and electricity. The bits of the economy we now have to do a bit harder: heat, buildings, transport systems, the technologies that all of us interact with every day, and on those things we're off track.
When it comes to the announcements yesterday, there's been some pushback from the Conservatives on what this means for normal people, suggesting this could be a real upheaval to actually make these targets and achieve that. Obviously, your role isn't getting involved in that kind of political discourse, but I'm curious what you think achieving this target actually will mean for real people.
I've come straight to this job from my previous job, which was the chief executive of the energy trade body in the UK. And let me tell you that business does not get out of bed in the morning thinking about climate change. I mean, a lot of the business leaders I work with do. They're good people. They've got kids. They're worried about the future in that way. But most of them are thinking about what the economic opportunities are. And in the 10 years I've been working, there has been a real convergence between technologies that are low carbon and technologies that are just good for the economy. They're better, they're cheaper, they're more efficient. People who have heat pumps in their homes are avoiding being dependent on volatile international gas prices. We've got record numbers of people who are unable to pay their energy bills in the UK because of those gas prices, and we are particularly dependent on them in the UK because of our gas boilers. We've got we've got a world-leading offshore wind industry in the UK, but we don't have technologies in our homes that can best take advantage of that cheap, clean electricity that we're hoping to generate and that the UK government is committed to build even more of. Heat pumps, electric vehicles, low carbon technologies are modern, they're efficient, they make the best use of the technologies we're building on the other end of the system. They're a massive business opportunity, and also they should make life better for everyday people. And just lastly, you might hear that I've got a chest infection right now. I'm asthmatic.
Okay.
My baby son is asthmatic. I live in a house because I've just moved with a 1970s gas boiler. The biggest source of poor indoor air pollution are gas boilers. It's the NOx emissions from gas. I will do anything I can to decarbonise my house, but I'm so interested in insulation and having a heat pump because I know that it will make the air that he breathes better and will make my lungs better. And we don't talk about the fact that these technologies also improve people's lives in countless ways, not just in their pocketbook.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it sounds very encouraging. Yeah. It sounds like it's
feeling
good.
punchy,
yeah,
because of the optimism and the
exactly.
pavilion.
It feels like we're one of the first countries, as you say, making these steps and taking these targets forward. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see what other countries do as we head towards February.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Thank you.
The White House says it will continue to send military aid to Israel, claiming the country has attempted to improve the humanitarian situation in Gaza. The Biden administration had previously set a 30-day ultimatum for Israel to take urgent and sustained actions to improve conditions in Gaza or face restrictions on military assistance. However, whilst Israel has, according to the White House, made some good progress, it's still limited, and relief groups say conditions are worse than at any point since the war started last year. The UN's aid agency for Palestinians, or UNRWA, said Israel failed to meet America's demands and that the enclave is on the brink of famine. Even after the Israeli military gave permission for a delivery to the northernmost part of Gaza, which has been virtually cut off from food for more than a month by an Israeli siege, the UN said it was unable to deliver most of it because of turmoil and restrictions from Israeli troops on the ground. Meanwhile, in Gaza's south, hundreds of truckloads of aid are sitting on the Gaza side of the border, with the UN saying it cannot reach and distribute the aid because of the threats of lawlessness, theft, and Israeli military restrictions. Sticking now with news from the Middle East, 3 Iraqi men have been awarded $42 million in damages for injuries after being tortured by US military contractors in 2003 to 2004 at Abu Ghraib, a prison which became the symbol of US human rights abuses during the war on terror. 15 years after the lawsuit was first filed in 2008, yesterday an 8-person jury in the US state of Virginia finally made a verdict and awarded Suhail al-Shamari, a middle school principal, Salah al-El-Jaili, a journalist, and Asad al-Zubi, a fruit vendor, $3 million each in compensatory damages and $11 million each in punitive damages. All 3 had testified that they were physically and psychologically tortured, suffered beatings, sexual abuse, electroshocks, threatened with dogs as they stood naked and hooded, and forced into stress positions, among other things. The jury found CACI Premier Technology, which supplied interrogators to Abu Ghraib, liable in the case for its role in the torture of detainees. CACI argued that there was no evidence to show that its employees were directly involved in abuses. However, the jury agreed with the plaintiffs that CACI was liable because it had supplied the interrogators who instructed military police officers to soften up the detainees. According to Human Rights Watch, to date, the US government has not compensated any victims of torture and abuse from Abu Ghraib. Now, as a TLDR viewer, it's clear that you have a thirst for learning. After all, why else would you have watched a 5-story video explaining the day's news? Now, if you want to continue your learning journey, you really should check out Brilliant. Brilliant is the online learning platform where you learn by doing, with thousands of interactive lessons in maths, data analysis, programming, and AI. These hands-on lessons have you comparing circuits to understand voltage and current, playing snooker to learn the rules of collision, planning your itinerary for an intergalactic music festival on a space-time diagram, and more. That way you'll build your natural intuition while gaining deep knowledge of scientific principles. In fact, Brilliant actually recently launched tons of new data science content, all of which uses real-world data to help you see trends and make better informed decisions. And don't worry, you don't need to be a world-renowned scientist to understand these courses either. Brilliant's courses are designed for learners of any level. Find out more and to try everything Brilliant has to offer for free for a full 30 days, visit brilliant.org/TLDR or click the link in the description. You'll also get 20% off an annual premium subscription. Thanks for your support and thanks to Brilliant for supporting this video.